Hey everyone, William Miller, National Brand Manager. Excited to have Mr. Chad Olinger. Chad is our Director of Customer Relations, which is much more than just customer service. Chad has led the development of our audit process to ensure that these coaches that we're making are to the highest standard possible. One of the projects that you've been leading to invite me to be a part of is to bring more communication to current RV owners, as well as to bring more education to first-time RVers. When somebody purchases an RV, they're a significant investment. Sometimes people purchase an RV in the fall months, and because the logistics, usually both parents may be working, although the pandemic may be an exception, sometimes people will be purchasing these without a lot of time, and it'll be required of them to winterize these through the winter months. So what is the process, and how do we even get started?
Let's go.
All right. So when we're in the process of getting ready to winterize, what's the first step?
Well, the first step, to be honest, is just having the right tools. They're pretty simple tools. You probably should have them. If you don't have them yet, you should have them if you're an RV owner, because at some point you're probably going to use them. So the first thing, cordless drill, or you can use a screwdriver set, but the cordless drill obviously makes it easy. Square bits. You want Phillips and square heads. Most of the screws in RVs are square heads.
Oh, okay.
And we do that because it makes it simple for all of the factories. Everybody in the factory can have the same bits. So one place to another, if a guy has to go up the line to make a repair or do anything else, he doesn't have to switch out bits, he doesn't have to do anything. It's all kind of universal around our factories.
I didn't know that. That's good to know.
That's just one thing that we've always done, is we've always used square head bits. Also, square head bits are harder to strip out.
Okay.
So that's another reason that we use those more frequently than like a Phillips or a flat. The other thing, basic socket set. Now this is a large socket. They're a little bit harder to find the large sockets, but this is going to be for your water heater. All of the Cruiser products use a 1 1/16 inch socket. Now that is for your anode rod. Some water heaters just have a plastic plug on them. We don't use those water heaters typically. We use the water heater that the plug and the anode rod is all in one, and it takes the 1 1/16 inch socket, and then of course ratchet and an extension so that you can reach it. The other things you'll need, pretty simple stuff. You'll need RV antifreeze, which is pink antifreeze. You can find that at Walmart, Meijer, big box stores usually have those. And then rags. You want to have some rags because you're probably going to make a mess. We all make a little bit of a mess when we do this, so you want to have that too.
Awesome. All right, Chad, so you've pointed out everything we need to get started. So my next question is, where do we start?
Well, first things first. Hopefully you've been using your RV. Hopefully you've been enjoying camping. So there's probably water in the system somewhere. There might be some in the tanks, there might be some in the lines residual from the last time you camped. There could be some just in fittings in general. Maybe you've emptied some things, but there's just some residual water sitting around. You want to do your best to get all the water out of the system that you can. So the first thing that I always tell people is make sure your tanks are empty. So empty your black tank, empty your gray tank, empty your fresh water tank. And then what I think is the most important thing that people overlook is you want to empty all of your water lines. And you might think, how in the world do you do that? Well, every Cruiser product has a low point drain system on it. That low point drain system is usually right around, if you find your freshwater tank fill and you look underneath the coach, it's usually right around there somewhere. There's a cold water line, which is blue, a hot water line, which is red. They both have a valve on the end. There's two lines coming out of the bottom of the camper together. That's your low point drain system. You open those valves, that'll drain all the water out of the water lines. Okay, so that'll get you out of your faucets, out of your water lines in the entire coach, and just get that going, let it drain. Don't do anything else until that's all drained out.
Now, something I want to be clear while we're on camera. I always get a little concerned because we say gray, we say black water. When we're draining this, is there going to be waste and sewage, or is it just going to be water?
Well, for your gray and black tanks, you're talking sewage and you're talking, used water in those ways. So those you want to make sure that those are disposed of in the proper places. You don't just want to let those go on the ground. It's illegal in most areas, as a matter of fact. But with the low point drains for your water lines, that's all just fresh water.
Right.
And same with your freshwater tank, that's just fresh water.
So those of you watching, you don't have to be in fear. Your waste is going to come from the other side. It's not going to be coming from this low point.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right, Chad, so I've opened up all the lines to allow the whole system to drain. What are we going to be doing next?
Okay, so as that's going on, we can transition to the water heater. That's the last tank that you want to make sure is empty.
Okay.
The water heater tank itself. So what we'll do, obviously this unit's already been winterized because we're here in the factory. It's that time of year, so we winterize here on the line. But we'll want to remove the water heater door. There's just a plastic clip, and then your metal door just pulls out and slides off. Just set that aside for a moment.
Okay.
And what you'll find in your water heater is at the bottom, you'll find this plug. This is the 1 1/16 nut that I was telling you about. Now, I've already got this one loose because we ship them loose. But when you pull this out, you'll see there's an anode rod on the end, and you'll just want to set that aside. But before you take this out, when you are loosening this up, understand this tank is pressurized, okay? So if you've got water in the tank, this is gravity pressure. So when you pull this out, water is going to shoot out of here, okay? You don't want to be standing here. You want to be standing to the side so that the water can go elsewhere, not on you. But once you remove this, you just let that tank drain.
Okay.
And it's quite okay for the water at the end. When it's almost done draining, it'll just drip down the side. That's perfectly fine. But you'll want to wait till that's done draining. And then really what we'll do is 90% of the people who winterize their units themselves, and everybody I know recommends that you just leave this out because we won't actually...
In the wintertime?
In the wintertime.
Okay.
We will not winterize the actual water tank with antifreeze.
All we're going to do is drain it?
Yep, all we're going to do is drain that, and then we'll just leave it be.
Now, a question I have. So I have seen some videos where people will pull this out. I know that most homeowners have these in their own water heaters at home, and I know a lot of people that don't even clean them or check them, but a lot of times these can get pretty nasty looking. So as far as just replacement, is there a reason why these get so nasty? Just for the people maybe like me that kind of wonder, what is this purpose doing? And then when should they maybe, if it is winter number 2 or winter number 3, where these would need to be replaced? So can you kind of talk about what its function is and maybe when they should look to replace them? Sure,
yeah. So this is called an anode rod on the end of this nut. And what this does, it's metal, and it is actually, it's an attractant to the minerals that are in like city water systems.
Okay.
So when all of those elements in the water system come into your water tank, they can corrode your water tanks.
Okay.
So if your tank is metal, like a water heater tank is metal, those minerals that are in the water can actually eat your tank away. You obviously don't want that because you're going to have a major mess to clean up. So this anode rod actually attracts those elements, and they eat away the anode rod as opposed to eating away the tank itself. So these, when you pull them out and they're nasty, that means they're doing their job.
Yeah.
Okay, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do, and you'll see them over time get a little bit shorter, a little bit thinner, and then once they get down to where there's not much left, you'll want to replace them.
Okay. All right, Chad, so we're inside the coach. We just drained the water lines. We drained the water heater. We pulled out the anode rod. So that's out there sitting and ready to go. We're now inside the coach. I had asked you a question. I said, hey, is it always going to be in the same location? Can you speak to when somebody goes inside their coach, how are they going to be able to find the interior access point of their water heater?
Okay, so it seems a little bit elementary, but it's pretty simple. The water heater is basically a 6-gallon tank, so it's not really big.
Okay.
But that outside access that you see is just the outside of the water heater itself.
Okay.
So directly on the other side of the wall, on the inside of the coach, is where your actual tank exists. So your fittings and everything are on the back side of that tank. So you just come in the unit and you go to the same location inside that you were just outside. So if it's on the back of the coach, your tank is on the back of the coach.
Okay.
Now, the key is, you obviously don't see it here, right? So it's hidden. It's almost always hidden. It's under a dinette bench. It's under a bunk bed. It's inside a cabinet. It's behind a drawer. So there are going to be some panels or something that you'll probably have to remove to get to it.
Okay. All right, Chad. So in the coach, as you just explained, we're on the back side of the water heater, so it required us to remove these drawers and open up the cabinet. So before we get into this on video, if you would just explain all the steps that we're going to go through now that we have access to the water heater.
Okay, so first, to get to the water heater and get to the actual water pump itself, what I had to do was open the cabinet doors, and I couldn't see it right away.
Okay.
There's 2 access panels in there, and you could see the screws that were screwing the access panels on. So that's where your cordless screw gun comes in handy. Remove those screws, pull the panels off, and right there is the back of your water heater. Just beyond the water heater, I could see the water pump. Well, it was behind these drawers, so I just had to remove those drawers, a couple of clips to pull those out, and then I can see the water pump and the siphon tube where you get the antifreeze into the water pump.
Okay.
Okay, so now we've located the water heater. We're at the back side of the water heater, and that's what we're looking at. So you can see there's a couple of water lines going in, there's a couple of valves, that all looks really complicated. Well, what we're trying to do here is bypass the water heater so that all of our RV antifreeze doesn't go into the water heater. Remember, that's about 6 gallons. So if you're buying RV antifreeze, you don't want to waste 6 gallons if you don't have to. And you can't pressurize the system until that water heater's full unless you bypass it. So that's what we're going to do now. So the 2 valves that are on the back side of the water heater connected to the blue and the red line, there's one on each line, you'll want to turn those valves the opposite direction that you currently have them, because right now you've been using your water tank and the water is flowing through the water heater. You want to turn that off to the water heater so that no antifreeze goes in. You'll just have to remember. Okay, so right now we're looking at the water pump. The water pump on this particular unit was right next to the water heater. That's not always common, but in this particular case, that's where it's located. As you look at the water pump, you can see there's kind of a blue line, which is a water line, and it's got a couple of white lines coming off of it. One of those white lines is actually a siphon tube. You'll actually place that tube into your jug of antifreeze, and then you'll flip the water pump on. But before you flip the water pump on, there's a valve located on that blue line that you'll want to flip in the opposite direction. That will actually pull the antifreeze out of the jug rather than pull water out of your fresh water tank. So you want to make sure that valve is turned the correct direction so you're pulling the antifreeze into the lines themselves.
All right, so we followed the procedure. We went the opposite direction on the bypass. We now have antifreeze into the system. What's the last step?
Okay, so once you start to pressurize the system, right, you'll hear the water pump will kick on, and you'll hear it running, and then when the water pump stops running, you'll hear it's kind of like a purring sound.
Okay.
You'll hear it stop. That means the entire system is pressurized, but we're not done yet.
Okay.
Now we have to go around the coach and one at a time just open up the faucet valve. So we'll want to turn on like your kitchen faucet and let it run through till it's flowing pink. Now, this is really important. You want to make sure on a faucet like this, you've got a double bowl sink, you run pink into both sides. That
Sure.
way we make sure we get the P-trap of this particular sink. We want to get the P-trap to be filled with antifreeze.
Okay.
Because we don't want water in there to freeze up and break the P-trap. Now we'll want to do that at every faucet throughout the coach. So here, bathroom, etc. Also, you want to make sure you do that on your outside kitchen. That's one place that a lot of people forget. Is you want to make sure you go to your outside kitchen and do that faucet as well, and that P-trap as well. It also winterizes your faucets at the same time. Faucets are not really robust on the interior
Sure.
pieces. So any residual water that freezes in there could break. There's a lot of small plastic pieces in there that could break. So we want to make sure we get that antifreeze flowing through those faucets.
And then one question regarding the toilet. So will they want to just cycle or flush until there's pink running through the toilet?
Yep.
Okay.
It should just take 1 or 2 flushes.
Okay.
It shouldn't be a whole lot of water to go through there.
Okay.
But you will want to make sure that you get your antifreeze running through that line as well.
So I learned quite a bit today. There you guys have it. You now know how to properly winterize. As you pointed out, not all models are the same. However, some consistent things that they can take from this learning. If on the exterior, they should be able to find the access point on the interior for the water heater. If they have any questions or confusion, of course, they're going to have now this video as a resource. And then again, they can also contact an authorized dealer or service center. They're going to have to pay for that, but there are services that they can have from other people to help them with the winterization process. And if all of those things don't work and they need to still reach out to us for support, how do you recommend they do so?
I recommend going to our website, cruiserrv.com. You can find there our customer service phone numbers. You can find our email. You can find our address if you still want to do some snail mail, which is crazy, but you might. And then there's also a chat feature on there. There's all kinds of ways to get in touch with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much.